Hey guys, James here. Today we're talking about adaptations. We're not talking about specific adaptations. Well, I mean we kind of are, but I'm not sort of focusing on one property. I kind of want to do this video just to talk about my feelings about adaptations and the way that fandom interacts with them and how they sort of relate to the source material. So this video was inspired obviously because I've been thinking a lot about sort of the nature of adaptations recently, primarily because of this. You may have heard of it, The Witcher on Sapkowski. Netflix has just dropped their trailer for The Witcher TV show that they are doing. I was excited about it. Go check out my video about that if you want to know more of my thoughts on that specifically. But really, I want to talk about sort of fan reaction to adaptations and sort of the nature that adaptations take and the role they play in the storytelling craft. The reactions to this Witcher trailer have been very mixed, to say the least. A lot of people are saying, this is not my Witcher. This betrays my memories of The Witcher or whatever, that kind of spiel. We've heard it all before. Every time a book is adapted to a film or another medium, immediately people come out of the woodwork saying, this isn't the way I wanted it, this isn't the adaptation I wanted, so on and so on. And it's impossible to please everyone. Now, in my opinion, there are two ways that you can adapt work. You can either take it the No Country for Old Men route. No Country for Old Men is a novel written by Cormac McCarthy that was adapted into a film, a very successful film by the Coen brothers. And the way they approached that adaptation was very much to use the book as a very strict frame to build their film out of. They used a lot of the cinematography is very reflective of the descriptions that Cormac McCarthy uses. The dialogue in it is almost 100% verbatim from the book. Very few scenes are dropped. I don't think any scenes are added. And it's very much by the numbers. We have taken this book and turned it into a film. Like that's one way to adapt something. And I think for a lot of purists, that is what they want to see out of an adaptation. A lot of people favour that kind of adaptation because I think it appeals to them personally. Like, as a fan of something, it's very easy to say, I love this, just give that to me again, without sort of stretching out of your comfort zone and thinking, how could it be different? What different aspects can we explore? And then there's the other way to adapt things, which is to take the core of that product, to take elements of it, to take the story, you kind of, if you're going to adapt something and say it's going to be a telling of this tale, you have to keep the story elements kind of the same. But you have room to expand on some things. You have room to reshuffle some things, reorganize things, to give it a different feel and make it something of its own. And that is sort of what The Witcher is doing right now, from what I can tell. They are keeping the main thrust of the story. They're keeping the elements and the motives and the characters more or less the same, but they're reworking certain elements of it to give it its own structure and like give it a more narrative flow that would be more appropriate for a television series than a book. And that is sort of where the element of a cross-media adaptation is really brought to the forefront. You cannot make a film the same way you make a book. It just doesn't work in the same way unless you work with the author very closely and have a very like already narrative. Like, this book was originally written as a screenplay, so it made perfect fodder for a verbatim reimagining of it. But The Last Wish is a short story collection. The Witcher saga is really all over the place in terms of what it chooses to present to you and how it interacts with different characters, and it works incredibly well as a book series. But you can't just, it would never work if you just took those books verbatim and made it into a TV show. It would not work as a television program for a mass audience. You would get those people that are grognard fans of the books that are like, yeah, this is exactly what I imagined in my brain when I read the book, and these are dialogues that I read in a book once. So you could get those people. And you also have, obviously, this is a video game. This video game is a highly successful adaptation of this book. How do you turn a book into a video game? The answer is by making the video game very much unlike the book. But here's the thing. There are two ways to judge an adaptation, okay? You can judge it as how well does it tell the story that I am familiar with, and the other way is to say, how well does it tell the story that it is telling in the medium that it's telling. That makes very little sense, so I will elaborate. This game was not successful because it adapted the story of The Witcher. It was not successful because it successfully portrayed the characters of The Witcher. It was successful because it is a very good video game. Okay? As much as Sapkowski would like to believe otherwise, the success of his books and the success of this game are not interlinked in almost any way. You could take those characters and you could change the characters and you could change the setting, but it would still be a good video game because CD Projekt Red made a good video game first and a good adaptation of the source material second. And that is really the truth behind any adaptation. No Country for Old Men is an immaculate retelling of this story, but it would not work if it was not a good film first. And that is sort of what you have to do when you're adapting something, right? You have to make it so that you are creating a good standalone product first and a good adaptation second. The Witcher show will not be good if The Witcher show is bad. And what I mean by that is, even with all the trappings, if they get the characters right, if they get the look right, if they get the story beats correct, if it doesn't work as a television show, if it's not got those elements that make those universal elements that make any TV show good, if it doesn't have that stuff down, it is not gonna work, regardless of how successful the skin on it is. And as a result of that, you're gonna annoy people, okay? Because there are gonna be people that are like, that's not how it happened in the book. It went like this in the book. Or that's not how it looked in the video game. Why isn't he fighting 12 monsters at once? And the answer to that is because they're different mediums, There are elements of the books that will not work in a TV show, and there are elements of a TV show that will not work in a book. And there are elements of a book that will not work in a game, and there are certainly elements of a game that will not work in a TV show or a book or whatever. Just look at how difficult it is for people to adapt video games into good films. There has never been one that is really good, and the reason why is because these people try and adapt the game first and make a good film second, and they drop the ball on making a good film. Like, you can look at maybe like the Assassin's Creed film, for example. It has the visuals, Like, I see this and I see that it is Assassin's Creed. He's doing things that I remember out of the game, but the film structure isn't there. Like, it doesn't make sense as a film. Like, there's pacing issues, there's weird elements that are sort of brought in, and those choices are made for adaptation reasons rather than good filmmaking reasons. And like, the prime example of that is those god-awful Resident Evil films that Paul W.S. Anderson made. Those films are plagued with times where things from the games pop up to make you as an audience member go, I remember that from the video game, without any real consideration as to how it would work in the film or as a film element. Like, you can't just take things willy-nilly, put them in a film format and go, yep, that's good. Because, like, you can say, okay, you adapted that creature well, like, it looks how it looks in the game, but it doesn't work because in the film you've not set it up properly in terms of it being a good film first. And another adaptation I've been watching recently is Catch-22, which is a George Clooney produced TV adaptation of Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Now, what they've done in Catch-22, the show, is highlight different elements from the book and made it more cohesive. Now, the book is very much this off the rails kind of almost absurd. It is absurdist, but like it's an absurdist satire about war. So there are a lot of comedy elements throughout the book, and the film, or the TV show, chose to downplay those elements. And that's sort of one of the things that I'm interested about with this Witcher adaptation, and with other adaptations as well. It's the opportunity of a different creative team to take the same basic skeleton and reconfigure the levels in a way. Like, you're rebalancing it. It's your opportunity to rewrite and restructure something to highlight different aspects of it. And that is not to say, I think the Catch-22 TV show is really good. Is it a perfect adaptation of the book? No, because it doesn't have everything verbatim from the book. But it does have those scenes, and like the scenes they chose to adapt and put in there work very well for the structure of the TV show they created. Like Catch-22 as a book, very structurally interesting in a novel form because it has a very fractured narrative that ties thematically into the story, but works very well as literature, wouldn't work at all as a TV show. And those are the sort of decisions where purists would go, it's not like that in the book. But you kind of have to understand that when you're adapting something, it's not a book. We're not adapting it to be a verbatim copy of the book. We're adapting it to be a TV show, and therefore we have to take what we want from the material, obviously do it justice, but also craft that into a new format that works as its own thing. I think that's really key. Like, one of the questions I heard about The Witcher from like an IGN interview was like, the guy went, is there going to be side quests in the show? And like, of course there's not going to be side quests in the show, you fucking pleb. It's a television program, not a video game. It's that kind of thing where those elements of the Witcher game worked really well because it's a video game and it made the video game good as a video game, but it wouldn't make for good television. Like, there's a meme now. I guess people are memeing about it, but I don't know. There's probably some people that are super serious. They're like, is there going to be Gwent in The Witcher? Like, Gwent is a card game minigame in a video game that was a great little diversion in a video game, but if they put it in a TV show, it would be fucking stupid. But like, you could have it as like a reference if you must have it in the background, but it would be fucking stupid to have him walking around playing card games with people in a TV show. And I guess I pray that people are smart enough that they're just memeing about it and they're not genuinely serious, where they want Geralt to like wander off and do fuck all for episodes at a time, because it doesn't work like that. And that's really sort of my take on adaptations as a whole. It's all about taking the core elements of what makes a property, but primarily making a good product on it in its own right. You know, I want The Witcher show to be a good television program. I want it to be a good Witcher show, but I want it to be a good show first and a good Witcher show second. And that's the same with all adaptations. If I'm going to see an adaptation of, I don't know, whatever's on my shelf, if I was to say a good adaptation of Station 11, for example, I want that to be a good film first and a good adaptation of that story second. And I guess the final thing is to say, you know, these things, even though they're based on each other, they do not impact each other at all. Again, much as Sapkowski would like to think otherwise, it doesn't matter, you know. Just because somebody adapts a book series that you love into a film that you don't love, if it's a good film, it's a good film, and it doesn't have to, if it's a bad film, it's a bad film. But if you watch a film and go, that was terrible, this betrayed my childhood, or whatever, you know, there are people like that. They're like, this show betrayed the fandom. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to love everything in the world. And it's not that people that are adapting things, it's not their job to give you your perfect vision of something. It's the product they wanted to make. You can judge that on its own merit, but by comparing it to the original source material or comparing it to other adaptations, you're kind of just like fucking cutting off your left foot for the sake of it. I don't know what that phrase was. That's not a real idiom, but you know, it's putting a weight around your own neck in terms of your enjoyment, because you're putting too much stock in the flavour of, you know, the adaptation. You know, you're putting too much emphasis on the individual trees and not paying attention to the forest. You know, you can criticize something for being a bad TV show if it's a bad TV show, but to say it's a bad show because they didn't make Yennefer look like how Yennefer looked in the books, like yeah, mate, it's a different format. They're not gonna, you know, put a video game character on the screen for you to fucking drool over. Like, that's not how it's gonna work. And there are going to be people out there that hate any adaptation that comes out, and they're always like, the book's better because it had these things that were different. But I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of room to judge different things as different things, rather than comparing it all as part of one narrative. Like, people said, oh, the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child ruined Harry Potter. Like, the text of Harry Potter, the books, didn't change because somebody reworked some bits and made a stage play out of them. You know, adaptations cannot hurt you, friends. You're safe from adaptations. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But it's a different medium. It's not going to destroy your enjoyment of the original source material. It needs to be taken on its own. And that's all I have to say, because I'm running out of filming time, and I'll see you in the next video at some point. Goodbye.